Region 2 relic, is retiring. Beth, we've got a card for you that's being signed by everyone.
And I brought a plant because I thought you'd be here.
We've got you a plant, but we just want to take the time and thank you, Beth. Beth, you've been extraordinary on this council, bringing up challenging issues, challenging us to make better outcomes, to save lives from the opioid overdose situation that's plaguing the United States, and of course, Colorado. You are always diplomatic with everything you say. You come in with a calm demeanor. I think the world of you, and we will miss you on this council, but am very happy for you for the next phase of your life, and that's retirement. So congratulations, Beth. Let's give Beth a round. I open it up to other members to say any words they may have. Commissioner?
Beth, I've already said when you came for the mental health matters proclamation, but it has been really an honor and pleasure to work alongside you and get to know you better. And you brought a level of expertise and empathy and kindness and insights that was so valuable and just really mattered to me. And I just want to thank you for your service. It's been really a pleasure to work alongside you, and I just wish you all the best. And please stay in touch. And it was so cool to work alongside you on something that we started from the ground up, and that we all of us on the council working together to shape this really successful endeavor, and you were a big part of that. And
wish you all the best, and thank you so much for all that you brought. It's really, I'm gonna miss you.
Yes.
How can I follow that, Beth, right? But it has been such a pleasure getting to know you, working alongside of you, going to the conferences together. I wish you the best of luck and good health in your retirement. And I'll stay in touch.
All right, Beth.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much. This has been one of my favorite tasks and be part of this commission or this council. I was very honored to be part of it. I'm glad the city entrusted that with me, and to be part of this group it's felt very meaningful, and I'm very just happy that I was able to be a part of it and get to know each of you as well. And a lot of appreciation and just thank you to Rupa for stepping in while was unexpectedly missing this meeting due to a surgery I had to have, and appreciate her stepping in for the next few months, or however long it'll take until they get my replacement hired. But so thank you very much, Rupa, and thanks to all of you. Those kind words mean a lot to me, and I really enjoyed being a part of this group.
I'll try to keep your plant alive.
Well, again, congratulations. You will be missed. Definitely, for sure. All right. We do have Patty Garcia from the town of Wellington will be stepping in for Mayor Pro Tem Mason. He is out. So, Patty, welcome to the council.
Thank you.
All right. We're moving along in the agenda. Public comment. This is a time for anybody to provide a public comment to the council of anything that's not on the agenda. Anybody online requesting public comment? Seeing none, hearing none, we will close public comment. Moving along to agenda item 3, approval of the 24th of April 2025 meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve those minutes as presented.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second from Amy. We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation regarding the motion? Hearing, seeing none. Anybody oppose the motion? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Item financial report. Is there anything to report on, Janelle, for the finances?
Just a few changes.
Sure. Great.
Oh, sure.
We're getting those put on. scroll down, Tom, past the minutes. It's a document with green, yellow, and pink, salmon color, right after the minutes.
Okay.
Right there you go. Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Of course.
Right, thank you. Today we'll be reviewing budget to actual financials through May 15th. Beginning with the inflows, to date we have received 3.6 million in revenue, and all 2025 funds have been received. Interest on investments and McKinsey settlement funds remain unallocated and available to be used for exhibit B purposes, and that's that unallocated column you see on the very right. Under expenditures, budget categories have been updated based on state recommendations and to align with the work being completed. So this does not change the scope of work for any of the grantees. It's just things change as far as how they're categorized and reported to the state. So it's going to look a little bit longer than it did last. Expenditures to date total 1.38 million, and all grantees, with the exception of Abundance and CSU, have received their initial payments. Abundance and CSU will receive theirs after their current contract. That is all I have to report.
Any questions for Janelle on the finance report? Anybody online, just make, sometimes it's hard for me to see, but Patty and Beth, do you have any questions on the report?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
I do always appreciate the format of the report. It's very, very easy to follow, so thank you very much for that. Okay, moving on. Let's go to grant administration. I'll turn it over to John. We've got to approve the Yarrow Collective 2024 final report. So we will ask the Yarrow Collective to come up. They got 10 minutes to provide the report and hopefully some time for questions. We'll the Yarrow Collective. You'll need to scroll down the slides.
Thanks for having us
Thanks
back.
for coming.
I know I'm silent, thank you by now. And I'm Gina, you, she, her pronouns. If we just keep scrolling, we'll just jump right into the objectives and what we've done the past year with these funds. A couple more slides. These are just reference, you've heard it before. Yes. And then, great, so just getting into one more. Thank you, sorry. Objective one, we set out to develop and implement a twice monthly art and outdoor pro-social event series, 18 total events, which we were able to reach with 9 arts-based events and then 9 more outdoors-based pro-social events this last year. And on the next slide, just to help illustrate, because pictures sometimes speak louder than words. Across all of our events, we did things like painting, roller skating, pottery painting, screen filmings. This is a photo that's, missing some saturation. It needs to turn up the brightness or whatever at Rollerland from the roller skating. And this is from one of our painting events. Here's Maggie, who's our harm reduction events coordinator, and she really wished she could have been here today to tell you all about these events, but she was sick. So she wanted to pass along her gratitude and wanted to point her out just since she was a major force in getting all of these coordinated and out there for our community. And on the next slide.
Perfect, so this was our objective 2, was to create a quarterly social connection series. So 4 events total, and we were able to do that, reaching pretty much just a bigger audience for these quarterly events. So we spent some more time marketing, spent more money, and we were able to reach more audience, so kind of bigger events. And then on the next slide, we've got some more pictures. So here are pictures of some of our quarterly events. So we had a winter South poetry workshop and a sound bath, which is up here in this top corner. We also had a screen filming of United in Anger, which is a film about folks with HIV and like AIDS activism. And we had a panel with that, which is that middle picture there. Those are our three panelists with lived experience in with that. And then we also had a comedy workshop with performances with some of our staff as well as some of our participants that we met through these events. Were able to come and do some comedy skits, and they were like surrounding recovery and drug use and those types of things. So it was a really fun event. So on the next slide are just more amazing pictures of all of our events that we got to do. This was from our bowling events, which we were so grateful to do both in Loveland and Fort Collins. The folks really enjoyed that. And then there's Miss Maggie again there in the middle. And then on the next slide, I believe we have objective 3.
Yeah, and across all of these events, we wanted to reduce as many barriers as possible to folks accessing those spaces. And to that end, we supported 67 attendees with transportation. And we also supported 110 attendees with gear. So this was, beyond supply categories. The 5K that we talked about in our 6-month report, like getting folks shoes so that they could actually participate in that, paddleboard rental stuff, so that kind of thing. And on the next slide, we're just going to look at some overall numbers. This should say annual numbers. Sorry about that. These are the annual numbers. We reached 481 total people across 22 events. 11 of those events were in Loveland, so really extending our reach to more parts of Larimer County. Maggie's done a really great job just building up relationships at the Loveland Resource Center. So like folks recognize her face there now, and we're just having our name better recognized there to reach that community. And then we also passed out harm reduction supplies, naloxone kits, 114 of them, fentanyl testing strips at all of our events as well. So those are numbers just from these events alone from the last year.
On this next slide, we just have some examples, pictures of our event flyers that we put out. Obviously, as you see, the Region 2 Opioid Abatement Council, we made sure to plug that in during, all of our events. And then they're quite colorful and pretty, if you would. Our Maggie really enjoyed actually learning Canva for this, and is very proud of these awesome flyers that she made. So we want to make sure to incorporate them into our presentation. And then on the next slide, we have some participant quotes. So during all of our events, we always try to get participants to fill out our surveys that we have, and they have, I always forget the name, what's the scale called? Likert scale. And then we also have open-ended questions as well. And so these were a couple of quotes that we got. One participant said, "Such a comforting open space that brought," I don't know if this was say me or back, "my love for writing in a safe and encouraging space." And then another participant said that their favorite part of the event was the opportunity to share their life events and take great advice from others during the event. So really just fostering that connection, both between us and the community, as well as, the community members themselves. So that way they are able to continue that support after our events. And then this bottom bullet point just says that participants commonly commented that our events provided either new pro-social activities that they had never even been exposed to before, or things that they hadn't done in a long time, like the roller skating was a big hit. They really loved being able to just kind of dive back into that childhood fun. And so, yeah. And then on our next slide,
scrolling down, there's a couple parts of the surveys I wanted to highlight in the report itself, just to give a little bit more information about some of the impact of the events. If you could scroll a little bit more, like you're on that, 2 fingers down a little bit. Just overall demographics. We,
So, right.
yeah, around here, about 37.4% of participants identified as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Some of these demographic numbers don't add up to 100 just since we always we prefer not to answer often, so some folks opt out of certain questions. And scrolling just a little bit more, 39.4% of respondents identified as LGBTQ+. So reaching a broad array of folks, and a lot of folks who attended these events were also experiencing some form of housing instability or were unhoused. And then on the next page, with some of the survey responses and some of what participants got out of the survey, just down a little more in this column, a little bit more. Thank you. Over 85% of participants reported either strongly agree or strongly or agree to, I feel like I can belong at this event, and then also I feel like I can get support from people here if I need it. And really, the participants at these events were a mixture of folks who either already identified as in recovery or already identified as using some form of harm reduction. But about 30% of them said they didn't feel like they had a supportive recovery community. And then a step further than that, 25% of them said they didn't feel like they had a support network, little to at all, even out, let alone a recovery support network. So just to see so many of them feel like they can belong at the event or that they can ask for support from people if they need it was something that we were really pleased to see, just since a lot of the goal of the event was to use these fun activities to get them in the door and start connecting them to resources and to an environment where they could start exploring what pathways to healing might look like for them. So I think that's all we have for you. We'll open it up for
The marginalized identity.
Oh, and yeah, across both of those, about 69% identified as having one marginalized identity, be that BIPOC or LGBTQ. That doesn't include unhoused, since we didn't ask super explicitly about that experience. Yeah. So,
Yeah, would you have, I realize this could be very difficult, but do you have a number of participants that may have been repeated in activity over activities? So are we seeing your numbers of unique guests coming to these, or are these, maybe the same person goes to 3 activities and they're being counted 3 times?
Yeah, I would say the overall 400 that was including duplicated participants. At our larger events, it's a little harder to track that just because we don't require a sign-in system just because it feels too much like intake paperwork. But at this 18 art series that happened monthly in Loveland and Fort Collins, probably the majority of those participants were repeat participants. We were seeing folks come back kind of month after month. With the caveat that we're working with a really transient community. So there were some faces that we saw at all 9 of the Fort Collins events, for instance, and then there were other folks we might have seen a couple times and then dropped off. And then the quarterly events I would had a kind of more unique reach of unduplicated. So sorry, I don't have an exact number on that.
I was wondering why I didn't think you would, but when you saw it.
No, good. There were definitely folks who came back every month because they were excited to see Maggie and to be able to engage in these events. And then there were definitely multiple that would bring a friend with them as well. So
That's what I'm hoping to hear.
yes,
That natural spread, right?
absolutely, yeah. And for Yarrow, really overall, a lot of our groups or activities are word of mouth between folks with the lived experience. And so we have a heavy presence in folks in the US at both the Murphy Center and the Resource Center because we go there often, folks know who we are, and it's pretty common that they hear about us one way or another, so.
I was really excited to see those numbers of participants that you were actually able to get to these functions. That shows, how important that barrier really is and that you're addressing that, so that's good.
Yeah, and a number of these participants also attend one of our harm reduction support groups called Risk Less, Live More, which we host at the Murphy Center. So we're seeing them engage in like kind of multiple access points of our programming, which is really, really great to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question was what Trustee Nolan had asked, and trying to capture unique individuals versus repeat participants, which is important because I think that shows that they're staying engaged. My question is, you're tracking individuals and some of the demographics, but what else are you? And maybe I missed it in the report. I have had a busy 2 or 3 weeks, but like the long-term benefits, we know what it is, but how are you tracking that to see maybe, do they feel less lonely, feel more connection? Do they feel better about, life in general? Is there anything else you're tracking with them participating in the long-term kind of feelings of well-being and things at the long run? Are you collecting that kind of pre and post, or how you feel about the session and et cetera?
Yeah, a lot of that we're doing with kind of big, like after engaging with these events, how much do you agree or disagree with the following? Like, I feel like I belong at this event. My circle of support has increased. We ask questions like that. I think for this first year, we were more thinking about it kind of event to event because we weren't sure how much we would have those repeat participants, but especially with this year 2 of awards. And I think for our next year, we're doing like half the amount of these events in particular. But now, since we're continuing it, we'll probably be looking at like finessing some of those questions, especially for our folks that we've known and had a relationship now for 6-7 months, to get some more in-depth information. Because some of this, or we also asked like, I currently have a manageable relationship with substances, agree or disagree. And about like 50 to 60% of these participants this year said, no, they don't have a manageable relationship right now. So it'll be interesting just over time, and with some of those repeat participants, if we see that number go down at these events, or if there's some, kind of ways we can finesse some of those questions to look at the longer term impact.
So I appreciate that you're doing that. I think that's really valuable. And I know we didn't ask that of you with the grant, and that wasn't part of it, but I would be very curious about that as you refine and develop that, to see kind of that long-term, consequences and important connection. I think it's really important, that connection piece, and that's what we were kind of looking for places of belonging. I know as a county strategic goal for us is to foster that sense of belonging. I would be very interested in that, to see how we can do that. So I know we didn't require that of you, but if you have any of that one, I would love to share that down the road or as you're ongoing. I think that would be really valuable information. Thank you.
And it's Jared still available for like data science. Great. Because I feel like this first year was a lot of trust building, and it's really cool to see like a lot of them are like very open to filling out our surveys. They're like, hi, this is how we keep this free, and then they're like, really? Like, let me fill this survey out. So I think we have enough trust built to like get some pretty meaningful data at this point. But I'd love to pick your brain about. So,
that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. We do have an action required to just formality accept the report.
Chair, I would like to make a motion to accept this final report.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second.
That's got a second. Any further conversation? John?
I just want to point out they have spent all the money and there's no request for a carryover.
Lovely, wonderful, cool. Thank you, John, for that. All right, any further conversation around the motion? None, anybody oppose the motion? Seeing any that passes unanimously. Thank you for your great work. All right, moving to
5B, that's the Northern Colorado Health Alliance request to carry over unspent money. This, as you all know, I serve on their board of directors, so I excuse myself to turn over the reins to Commissioner, and you guys can yell when I come back in.
So,
Mr. Chair.
Okay,
So, I'm assuming we're just gonna have this discussion just in general. So, if I might, just a point of personal privilege right off the bat, it occurs to me after that topic was brought up, we have some policies with the Behavioral Health Policy Council and the county regarding overdue or carryover funds or leftover funds. And we don't as a ROAC, and I'm wondering if that's something we should explore, is having maybe a policy for that, especially at a certain amount. And John's raising his.
Just on that point, every contract says unspent monies must be returned. So that's the default.
Okay.
So the question is, and the budget form that they turn in on their final has a place for you to indicate how much is left, and if you'd like to request it, how would you use it?
Okay.
We have been a little maybe casual in making a point of talking about that and deciding if that's okay or not. Sometimes we have and sometimes we haven't. So I think we need to just be a little more rigorous. And that's why I spoke up about if they've spent it all, they're not asking for it. So.
And I think that's a good point. And we have been, some of them were maybe not as large as this one, and so maybe we weren't as, maybe we need to be a little more, and thanks for reminding us of policy, but maybe we need to be a little more process oriented and have that discussion, even if it's just a couple of thousand or something. So, but I do think kind of revisiting that, and I think especially large amounts, that does warrant a more thorough discussion. So that's where I wanted to start the conversation with. And could you remind us, John, of the amount? I think we did approve one.
You did you did approve, I believe, the 12,434, if I've got that right, for the Changing Minds campaign. But the client assistance funds and the teen self-care event for 50,500 is still to be discussed.
So with that kind of starting point, I open the floor for any questions, comments.
If I can just, John, you said 12,000 was granted to.
That's what I'm looking at on the slide.
Yeah.
I thought it was 11,000.
So did I. I thought it was.
So I might have my math wrong.
Okay.
But
Around there.
the sheet, I think that's still, keep going. It's the next one. Yeah, this one. And so, yeah, see the 12, no, I remember 62,934. I just don't remember, I thought it was 11 and change and 50 and change.
I thought it was,
I'm going by memory.
I thought it was 10,000 for the Changing Minds campaign, and that is what it says on the chart on the screen.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what we had.
Okay.
Just that, so, but maybe we should go back and confirm that with the minutes.
Yeah, this is from the minutes.
So it is 10. Okay, so it's 10, so that leaves, the other 40,000 odd change
52,934
from, even without the 10.
without the 10.
Okay.
Right, it was a total of 62,934. So now you've got 52,934 you want to talk.
Trustee Young.
I really do think that we need to have clarity and make sure that we're treating everybody the same.
Yes.
It's too hard to come by money. So I think that having them return it, as, if it's, 5,000, or if since we've done 10, maybe use that. Anything, above that must be returned. I just think that maybe we should have a return so we could collectively look at something else maybe have come up that we could put those monies towards. So that would be kind of where I would be going. I think there's a figure there, I just don't know what it would be at that cap. Certainly, I would not agree with anything over 10. You know, I was thinking less than that. But I didn't know if, because we did it once, you know, I'm not sure where we should go for that.
And I think that's a good point. I think we were kind of, you know, was something kind of, we weren't planning before, and so we put the billion up trying to have that discussion. I agree. I guess that's how I started that. I'm reminded that they have to be returned, but, you know, if we're gonna talk about a large amount, a small amount, I think that's a big difference, and I agree with you, I was thinking 5 or 10. Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add to this? And I'll go around the room, give everyone a chance.
Well, I think we're having two different conversations, right? One is more general, how do we, you know, making sure that we deal with all of our contracts the same, and how do we deal with potential carryover funds and how we approve or not. And then the other one is a specific request, right? And so part of me thinks that the more general one, we should have Chair Tom Gonzalez part of that conversation. So I'm not sure the order that makes sense, I guess, in my opinion. I just would like him to be able to weigh in on that part. And then more specifically to this specific request, the only question I have is then if we have them return it, and then potentially we might still want to support this, do we have them reapply, or how I guess that's more of a process thing, have them return it, and then later in the year, if we have another round of how do we spend these monies this year, would be the question.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Beth. I think that's a great point. We are having two discussions, so let's focus on the one that's in front of us, whether or not we approve this or not. And I agree with you. We should have that discussion with Director Gonzalez.
I also agree with all that, but I guess I would think we should have the other one first, because we wouldn't want to approve, you know, $60,000 in carryover and then 10 minutes later say we're not going to approve anything over $10,000 carryover for any other organization.
So, hearing that, maybe we just don't approve this request until we have a bigger discussion so that we can treat everyone.
I'm just confirming that we have already approved $10,000 for the Changing Minds.
Last meeting.
Yes, and that was what I remembered. So really what we're approving is the $52,934, which still links back to the discussion of how much do we approve and how much we don't. So, but we've already hit it, at least the threshold of 10,000.
Yeah.
Right, well, 10,000 then seems to be a good threshold, I think, since that's what we've said.
Yeah, so I mean, in our packet, it looks like we do have policy options. So if we're ready to make a decision on those policy options first, then would we be ready to make a decision on this? Or would it change? Like, do we want to make the policy decision first and then come back to this based on what our new policy decisions?
I think that's a great point. And so maybe we need to pause this discussion real quick and bring Director Gonzalez back in the room and have that bigger policy discussion. And I don't know, how was that worded on the agenda? So because then we'd be making two discussion items, and I don't know if that was actually listed on the agenda.
Yeah, so the agenda first is Northern Colorado Health Alliance request to carry over unspent money, and the next after that action is direction for unspent money.
Okay, so let me do this. Let's call Director Gonzalez back in the room. Let's have a vote to switch the agenda items overall, and then we'll have that discussion with him in the room, and then we can go back to the next discussion. I think that'd be a really good way to kind of approach this. So Director Gonzalez, we feel that we need to have you back in the room to have this bigger discussion and ask you to, we didn't make a motion on this yet because we feel like we should have a bigger discussion on the policy about whether we may allow this amount of money or not. And that would mean we would need to flip the agenda items on the agenda. So we would like to ask you, I would like to make that motion to flip those items. I know we didn't do that at the beginning, but now that feels more appropriate from our discussion to flip those two agenda items and discuss the policy first and kind of have that discussion and then have you leave as we make this decision.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Does anybody oppose the motion? All right, so we noted that 5C has been moved up and 5B is now after C, so we'll move to 5C. Direction for unspent money. Tom, if you could scroll down quite a ways. Oh, no, right there, actually, thank you. What we did we're hearing from the last meeting is Brooke and I worked on working with Janelle and John and others, getting what the current policy is, and you heard from John, it's in the contract, you have to spend it all. What have we done, what's flexible, is we have had at least 3 occasions where our grantees have extended their contract by a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And much of it was timing. If you recall, at Harvest House, they were unable to get some bids in and get the contractors in and the work within the 12 months. So we extended it to when they'll have that work done. So we have done that we've set a little bit of a precedence there. Then when we scroll down, Tom, to key considerations, we talked with our wonderful Jessica Plummer from Behavioral Health Services and asked, what does Behavioral Health Services do in these situations? And they pretty much said, well, we take a lot of things into consider. How much is the amount? The reasoning is staying along the lines of the scope of the work and the outcomes that were desired, optimization, again, alignment with the objectives, project impact, and future funding. So does that need to be adjusted? So if we scroll down a little more, what we put together here is some, proposal kind of setting the stage for the council to consider. There's some options. Option A would be reinforce existing policy, carry forward requests. Option from the final budget report template, just say no and reiterate obligation to return all unspent funds. We could still extend the contract period like we have, but if the contract ended, we would just say no. We'll just reinforce the existing policy. Option D would be create a formal request process or a policy prior to the grant ending that would be specific within the contract that says if they are going to request for carry forward monies, there would need to be a written justification in advance. They need to use the plan for the next period, confirmation of alignment with original grant goals, and we would require their approval in advance of the grant expiration. And so in this case, this grant's already expired. By how many months? It's been a couple, is that right? 2 plus 2.5. Anyway, that's what we put on paper to get the conversation rolling, so I'll open it up for more conversation, more dialogue. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, so we just extended the deadline. We haven't really done it a certain amount in the past, and we may keep these, and I just want to clarify that again.
I've got some history. So before I became involved, what we did with the first year contracts was everybody didn't get another 1-year contract. They were made into a 2-year agreement. And so in that first cycle, unspent monies were just allowed to be part of the 2-year contract. And so they were just, okay, we're giving you 2 years total. So we're wrapping up the end of the 3rd year right now. We're in the 3rd.
Wrapping up the third round.
Right. And so everybody got a new agreement for that. And so we're doing 1-year agreements at a time, not like just saying, hey, now we're going to increase the amount. Now the time's 2 years instead of 1 year. So there isn't, because we've done it differently, there isn't like a set pattern. And I think you can regroup as long as we give people a heads up about this is what we're going to do going forward. I don't know that you have to stick to that 10,000 if you guys feel that's too high, even though you've done it once. As long as we tell everybody ahead of time.
So I'll just remind that first 2-year agreement is because that's how the state had done it, because they asked for a 2-year plan And then and then they said, okay, now you have to have this. So we're all adjusting too as we're
That's
getting
correct.
Yeah, and so, I'll just go ahead and jump in here. I think, my preference is, since we already have a policy, I hate to just change it right away. I'd like to maybe reinforce it. But maybe we need to look at still kind of, maybe an option in case, let's say, something happened, a director had to leave suddenly or something, or there's some kind of very unusual circumstance and they had to regroup, or, something kind of to allow a little discretion or flexibility just in case there's some unusual circumstance. But I just feel like if we add another carry forward process, that's going to create another complexity to the grant to make things a little more already, another decision point that we have to make when we already have several. So I feel like I would like to maybe stick with the existing policy and then, just add that maybe a little caveat in case maybe they had a flood and they had to move out of the building.
Circumstances.
Circumstances, just to be, yeah.
Okay, appreciate that point. Yes, Beth?
Yes, thank you. I just have a slightly different perspective in wanting, I really kind of lean toward option B, mainly because we would still have, you have to spend it all in the time period, but if something happens, then you have this process that we've outlined of what you need to do to request a carry forward. And I guess my thinking is, if we draw a hard line and it's still something that goes along our priorities, what we want to spend it on, we would actually like them to do it. I think it's actually an easier process to allow that carry forward than have it come back, have another process, because we have to expend those dollars in the given amount of time anyway. So I feel like offering the process to see what their needs are, plus sometimes in a year, more than just extenuating circumstances, you can have things like the Yarrow Collective had venues that donated and they thought they'd have to pay, and so they ended up having more money. So there are things that are kind of less, not really extenuating circumstances, but just kind of life that doesn't go as expected. And so I actually think it'd be easier on us and could meet our goals still if we allow a process for them to request a carry forward. My thoughts.
Yes.
I'm with Beth. I'm leaning towards B. As somebody who's managed a grant and had to ask for an extension, because things didn't go quite as we planned, but we had to request it before the grant was finished.
Yeah.
So I think saying, that you have to have this within 2 months or whatever, because we knew ahead of time that we were going to need to ask for the extension, as opposed to coming to us after the grant is finished and said, oh yeah, by the way, we have this extra money and we'd like to do this, this, and this with it. I think having that process, the policy is you need to try to spend out all of your money to the end of the year, but to have a process saying, if for some reason you feel you can't spend it, what is it? And the written justification should really be focused on carrying the money over to continue the work that has started, as opposed to starting something new.
Okay.
If I could ask John, because I agree with various parts of what's been said. Extension, I think, is a whole different thing than if they're at the end of the contract and they have money left over. So I think if something was, they had a fire or they, lost a department head or something, couldn't make things go, then they could extend the contract. So my question to you, John, is for easeability on you guys' part of the accounting, would it be easier to extend a contract under unusual circumstances than to have rollover monies? Or would you say there's really no difference?
I think administratively it's 6 of 1.
Okay.
I do. I think I don't think the work is more or less.
Okay.
I think the one thing, and I like the do it before it's over, but sometimes you thought you were gonna spend it all and you didn't. Because something happened in those last 30 days that you thought was gonna happen. And so I just want to acknowledge that maybe I can see it happening, something I see happening that's delaying it, another time I might not. I just want to just comment on that.
Well, I would agree with an extension. I'm not too keen on forwarding the funds, because they can always come back and reapply, for that next round. You know, and I don't think we've ever had a pot of money that we haven't been able to get rid of. So I don't think the risk of having funds that we haven't been able to get spent before the end of the year will be a problem. So, you know, if it does have a rollover, to me, it's gotta be very minimal, you know, under 1,000 or something like that. Otherwise, I would rather see an extension. And maybe we look at that within 30 days of the contract ending, you must, you know, that's the deadline for an extension if you feel that maybe, you know, more time is not.
If I could just reiterate the timeline in the contracts and the process now is after your 12 months, you've got 30 days to turn in your reports and tell us how much you've spent. And at that time is when you're supposed to indicate, I've got money left over, and then what we do here is kind of so it is sort of already locked in at 30 days after the end of the agreement. So that would be consistent with what we're kind of already doing.
So two things. One is, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is there's a lot more comfort if we set a limit on the, right? We have an actual monetary limit. I know that's not in the proposal, but I think we could easily add that. And then maybe to carry off that point, maybe there's two different things. Maybe there's an extension with a higher limit, and then a sort of different carryover with a lower limit because that's a new project. And I don't think that's necessarily too cumbersome. But the second point, why I would be in favor of B is because I think it just promotes responsible stewardship of the money, right? I don't think we want to be in a system where we're saying, essentially, if you don't use it, you lose it, which means that everyone's just going to use it. And so I think telling our grantees that, hey, if you're responsible and you have $2,000 over because you've been really diligent with that allocation, you come back and you want to use that, we might let you use it for a new project. I think it's just beneficial in the long run.
I think these have all been great points and great discussion. It's such a fast moving process, and I know we've had a lot of requests for extensions, so that seems like that's more of an industry, but I think with this larger request, that's what made me uncomfortable because it brought 2 other projects, and then I'm wondering if everyone would be, oh, I'd like to add this program, so maybe I'll pull back from this and have this extra money. So I want it to be going for what it was intended. So for me, though, I mean, we already approved the 10,000, but if I remember right, that was always something that we had wanted to do in the previous contract, but hadn't put the line item into, so they'd already spent it. So it was something they had already, the 10,000 was something to pay for, they had already, if I remember that right. And so it wasn't like a new thing, it was something they had already planned. And the other 2 things were something kind of new. And so to me, that was not enough time for us to really have a formal presentation and consider it. So that's kind of where I think those limits that's why I suggested a hybrid, because I still think there has to be some of that kind of guardrails to kind of have them focus on what they said they're going to do and trying to focus those funds.
So do we want to say, in order to apply for the carryover or the carry forward process, you have to meet these criteria? And then there's questions up above this that kind of get to what you're saying, Commissioner. If we can scroll up a little bit.
Certainly. We do have a hand raised as well. From David, so I can scroll.
David, sorry, we didn't see your hand.
No worries. You guys were in depth in a conversation. I didn't want to just jump in. I will add that from the legal aspect of trying to draft these, there's a distinction between them. You've talked about the extensions. The extensions are pretty straightforward because all we're modifying is the deadline for it. But all the other terms and conditions, the reporting aspects, the the purpose of it and what activities, those all stay the same. So by doing an extension, that's a pretty straightforward legal process that we do with all sorts of contracts. So that one's pretty easy. If somebody were to come forward to the council and say, hey, we ran into this difficulty, or let's be positive and say, hey, we were so efficient that we managed to do everything in this year, but we only spent 75% of the money. We want to keep doing this for another 25% of a year. We can do an extension pretty straightforward. There was another discussion, and I apologize, I can't see everybody very well on the little screen, who raised a question of if they want to roll that money over and use it for a different purpose. Then we run into an issue where other applicants want to also apply for funding, and they have a set forward process for an application that they have to go through. So any of the grantees who have funds and want an extension for the same purpose, that's one path. If they want to use it for a different purpose, then you already have rules on and criteria to evaluate, do you want to approve it? And it should go back in so that everybody is able to be evaluated together for it.
Certainly.
So this just gets to be,
I think we should.
okay, back.
Back up. Of course.
These are, I think, like the criteria that we can put in place to get to both, to what David and Christian were talking about.
Yeah, I agree with the concept that it has to be for what was originally proposed, can't be for a new service. If you want a new service, then that should be in your application for funding for the next year. And I think these are good questions that Rufus put out that you can ask, what are their delays, misalignment, did the world explode and all of a sudden you have no funding someplace else?
And I do think, though, David's right, if there's a certain amount, I think that was part of even the page before on 39 or 31. I mean, if it's more than 10% or 20%, that's, to me, that should maybe just go back. I just feel like that's maybe some, as David said, that legal consequence, maybe it needs to go back in to have everyone have a chance to apply, because we're talking 15 to 100,000, that could be a whole other thing. I'm just trying to think, because it can be really easy to, we're at over 60,000, so maybe it just curious.
Two of our agreements are as large as 440 and 450,000. 10% is 45,000.
Yeah.
That's great. So
You can put a percent and a dollar cap.
yeah.
I think, after what David said, it just sounds like maybe a more clear cut thing is, make sure the people know that if they feel they're gonna have an overage, or if something happened that they didn't use those funds and they need to extend that program, that they need to request an extension for that program. Otherwise, the funds will be expected to be returned. I mean, I think we need to not make it so, yes, I will make a motion.
Can you say that motion again?
That, okay, let me think how to word this. Carryovers, no.
You want David to kind of maybe?
Yeah, maybe David can. Is that what you willing to word that motion?
If I'm understanding, well, I want to make sure I'm understanding what the proposed motion is that it sounds like you want a proposal that entities who have existing contracts may apply for an extension in order to spend the funds for the same purpose as originally granted.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any other restrictions on that? Do they need to comply with the provisions you've outlined in the tiny little box on the side of my screen?
Yes, I think definitely they need to have, we have to understand what it is that caused this extension. And I would like to have it, the extension be no more than 5% of their funds.
Okay, and I heard discussion of a possible dollar cap as well. Is that something you wish to have?
I would hesitate to put a dollar limit, because if you're talking about it's a major calamity, they could have half their grant left. And if you say I can only have 5,000, I think again, we need to know the reason for it before you said that.
Yeah, a little different.
Yeah, you're talking about extension, we already do that.
Right.
So I think the more the question is on carryover. So, but if you want to frame it there, I believe that's the call to the question, is are we going to do carryovers? If so, what's the process?
Okay, I would make a motion that we do not accept carryovers, because we won't accept carryovers because the extension can take the place of the carryover.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. Further conversation.
We do have Beth.
Beth, sorry, good to see your hand.
Thanks. Dave, would you mind giving me just a really, I think I know, but I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. What is the difference between a carryover and an extension?
Well, legally, there's not really a distinction between them. I think the term carryover is used in governmental entities quite extensively because fiscal years have these impacts where funds have to either be spent or they're lost. But for grants and other contracts that could roll into other years, it is possible that the carryover really is just the same thing as an extension if you're using it for the same purpose. So that's really what the question will depend on, is if you're extending the grant agreement so that they can do the exact same purpose, then you're really just extending the existing contract. If you are authorizing them to retain that funding and use it for a different purpose, that may be an easier way to refer to it as a carryover, because you're just giving them the ability to reuse that funding past the contract expiration.
Yeah, my intent was only for a extension because I wanted, because of the items you pointed out legally, they're to use those funds based on what was given to us, and that's what we voted on. So I feel a rollover can get too messy with what they're going to use those funds for. So an extension would be exactly that, extending what it is that they were given those monies for to do.
That is a little adjustment. Are you okay with that friendly amendment? Okay. So what I'm hearing that's on the table is to continue with the process of grant extension as long as the intended use is what was in the scope of work.
Correct.
Approved scope of work, okay.
At no more than 3%.
Whoa.
Or 5%.
Okay, back to 5% though.
Right, no dollar amount, but 5%.
So they could, again, there was a question, but what if they needed to extend it because they couldn't get the contractor out there and that's building the wall, so that 5%, that does make a big difference in the motion.
That does.
But I think that's what you had talked about, but I do think that if there is something like that, David, correct me if I'm wrong, that could be, there's a little flexibility, there was something really, like outstanding, we could probably have a vote and kind of have that discussion at that time, if it needed to be a different extension for various reasons, would that be according to what we have flexibility there?
Absolutely. The ability to set a limit on how much you're authorizing to be used in an extension can be decided at the time of the extension. You're under no obligation to even grant the extension. You could deny the extension, under which point the original contract would require that the funds be returned back. If I'm understanding everyone's debate, that may turn to You have reason. The reason that they provide may trigger whether or not you want to grant all the extension carryover money, whether you want to limit it or you want to deny it.
And thank you, David. And all of our extensions have come to this council for approval.
Then there doesn't need to be anything in there, the amount or percentage.
That's why I thought I just clarified with the night.
Yeah, that's better.
So there's a motion on the table to continue with extensions that are approved by this council for only intended work, activities that were in the scope of work. Further conversation?
Do we require, do we have a policy in place right now that if somebody's requesting an extension, they have to provide a reason why?
Yes. Any further conversation? Okay, let's do roll call on this one. So, Town of Estes Park. How do you vote? Yay. City of Loveland.
Yay.
City of Fort Collins.
Yes.
Larimer County.
Yes.
Town of Wellington.
Yes.
And the Board of Health representative votes yes as well. So that motion passes unanimously. All right.
So now we need you to, now you have to go through the.
I will add, staff will put this together to bring back to the council to make sure we got it right. So it'll be in a document. We'll work with John because I want to make sure we got this right. All right, I will step out for 5C. I will say, spirit of time, we did, at Butler, we gave Butler 20 minutes. We're at.
Okay. Well, I think this will be really quick.
Okay.
Provide clarification.
Yeah. Okay, so, so now we have that other motion, if you could pull that up on the agenda. So we had a request for a carryover request to take the $52,000 and use it for two new purposes, I believe, right? So I'm opening the floor for discussion or any other motions. Do we have a policy? We just confirmed or finalized the policy. So. Trustee Young.
I would like to make a motion that we deny the request for the funds to be not extended to be rolled over.
Is the reason we're doing that, just to clarify for the minutes, because it is not one of the original approved purposes?
It was a budget item, it was an agenda item, so we need to take action on it.
No, I agree, but just
Yeah.
for the purpose of the reason that we're denying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? May want to abstain from that motion? Okay, with that, motion passes. Is that correct? All right.
Quick question.
Hey, Tom.
Beth.
Oh, sorry, Beth, go ahead.
Just quick question. The teen self-care was a new item. It wasn't, that's why, that was the reason, right? I'm just kind of making sure.
Yes.
Okay, so we would, if we want, I mean, we would be open to them coming back with a proposal requesting these funds for a new contract, right?
Right, yeah, it's just to go through the steps. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome. All right.
They're probably already over the 5% of the 10,000 already allocated, at least close to it.
Yeah.
All righty. Got through that, good work, everyone. On to item 6. We've got the Butler Institute here to provide some, they want to get our feedback, provide some timelines to us. If you recall, the Butler, welcome. The Butler Institute has been doing lots of data evaluation and proposals for us, but it was through one of our grantees. This year we decided to pull that out and directly work with them, but they also work with our data team, which is led by Dr. Jared Olson, and Commissioner attends that meeting as well. So we'll turn it over to Butler Institute, and we look forward to your presentation. Oh, Mayor, yes.
And I probably won't take 20 minutes. So mostly we have an update for you all on what we've been working on because we've just been able to sort of reschedule the opioid, we're calling it the Opioid Abatement Advisory Group, because they are not a decision-making body. They are advisory to consider the things that this council is then making decisions on. So that group, since the new contract started, has met once in April and then is scheduled to meet again next week in May. So we don't have a lot of new information to bring to you today, but we can provide you an update of what we're working on. So if you want to scroll a little bit, just a reminder for those of you that don't know, I am Kavitha Kailasam. I'm with the Butler Institute at the University of Denver, but I'm based here in Fort Collins. It's a national institute with staff all over the country, and I get to live here. So I get to be our representative for this work here in this community. We have two goals related to this contract that we're working on. One is to provide resources and recommendations through the Opioid Abatement Advisory Group to this council to support the work that you are doing in supporting grantees. And then the second goal and work we're doing is around providing technical assistance directly to grantees around their data collection and evaluation work. And so I did connect with the grantee earlier that talked about wanting some support around that data collection and evaluation. So our team will connect with them. If you want to scroll forward, I can tell you what we're currently working on. So related to goal 1, the best practice support, our team is currently conducting an environmental scan of what are some of the other practices of both ROACs around the state, as well as national practices. This includes administration, grant making, reporting, evaluation, to see what other groups are doing and what's working well here, what can be amended, and we'll provide that information to the working group, which will then come to this group for review and consideration. And then we're also working on updating the membership of that working group. So we have a group that had been meeting throughout the course of last year, and now that we reestablished this contract through the ROAC, we're working to update the membership that will be involved in that group. And then related to, you can go back to the last slide. I don't know if he's, thank you. And so then related to the grantee evaluation TA, technical assistance, we are just about to communicate with grantees. We're waiting for our next meeting with the Opioid Abatement Advisory Group, and then we'll send out a communication to all the grantees letting them know we are available for that technical assistance. We are able to conduct up to 3 individualized sessions for each of these grantees. Not everybody will need it. Capacity varies among grantees. Some have their own in-house evaluation, some do not. And so we'll really be able to customize that based on what individual groups need and want. And this, through engaging with the grantees in this way, will also have the ability to kind of consolidate recommendations of what could overall ROAC evaluation approach look like. That's what's going on with that. Just a general look at what the timeline looks like. So right now, we're going into spring into summer. We're reconvening our advisory group, like I mentioned. We're working on that environmental scan. We plan to have that done next month in June. So that's probably would be ready to come to this group in July, I would imagine, by the time the working group is able to look at the recommendations and then come and present here. So in summer of 2025, we would bring recommendations to the council's review and consideration. And throughout fall and winter, we'd be providing consultation both to grantees and to the ROAC as needed to support the implementation of these practices as well as evaluation TA. And that's it. So our next steps in this current moment are providing that grantee outreach, completing the environmental scan, and then working with the Opioid Abatement Advisory Group on reviewing all of these recommendations. So that's what we've got. Any questions?
Great presentation, yes.
Thank you for this great presentation. I was looking at the slides last night, and could you just expand a little bit more about, I'm very curious about the environmental scan. I mean, I've done different, in education, like in public school education, we did environmental scan with a group and other practices, but I'm curious how this looks with this lens.
Yeah, so I mean, the environmental scan could be anything and everything, and we really need to narrow our scope. So what is happening right now is one of our team members at Butler has been looking at ROAC websites across the state and just kind of pulling down whatever we can, whatever is publicly available on their websites to understand how different folks are, like I mentioned, some of the grant making processes, evaluation processes that are available on the website. Not everything's available. That is what we're going to bring to the Opioid Abatement Advisory Group to have them see what is the scope of information available and then maybe rate their preferences on what we would like to really focus on to go forward and provide more recommendations around in that environmental scan. So the scan will include that, grant making processes, ROAC processes, maybe what different RFPs look like, the timeline of RFPs, kind of having everything at a glance. And then comparing that with other best practices. So yes, this is what ROACs are doing. What else do we know about best practices around grant making or evaluation reporting, things like that? There will be some contextual information too, just around substance use data trends, anything that informs what this council is doing related to its grant making.
Yes. A couple more things, and that's all great. I think, I also work on the data group. I think you guys are involved with the data group too at the state level. And they've been working with Johns Hopkins and looking at, through that data review. I think we're one of the only or one or two areas in the country that had zero discrepancies, which means we spent all of the funds appropriately. And they've been looking and following all these and making sure all the best practices. So I'm just curious, are we going to be tying into some of that too to look, because they've been doing some of that too, looking at, listening to what the Johns Hopkins and some of that group have been looking at and reflecting back to us. Will that be kind of part of that conversation as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's another part that we've started to collect is what the Colorado group is collecting. Okay. So bringing that all together in one place, basically, to look at.
Really cool website.
Yeah, I agree. And if you have recommendations next week when our group meets of what else you'd like specific focus on, we can make sure that we're working on that.
So that's my next question. I'm not trying to drag this out, but a couple of things I'm cautious about. First, 17 regions, 19 regions, I think 19. There's a lot of numbers in my head, like I said, my brain's still not working. So every region is very unique, and some have multiple counties and some have one county. So I figured that's and there are lots of different processes. So that's part of my next question. Are you looking to standardize what we're doing with everyone else doing? Because I still feel like that's kind of what is so unique with what the Colorado Attorney General allowed us to do. It's for us to form and spend this and form and focus on what we thought was best for our region. So I'm wondering what is the what you're looking at when considering every region so different, because I do talk to my colleagues and other commissioners across the state, and some of them have put out RFPs and one never applied, and they can't get folks to do something that they want to do. But then sometimes the multiple counties have a lot of trouble just getting to agreement. So I'm curious about that, or maybe I'm digging too deep.
No, I mean, I don't think there's any what's the word? There's no hope of what happens with it as a data point, right? So you can consider maybe there's a practice that's happening that we want to try here, or maybe we recommit to what is happening here, but it's just data to be able to look at what is happening across the state and have some options.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. I appreciate you answering my questions. I'm just curious, because I'm also kind of cautious that I kind of like protected that we've kind of been nimble and moving, but I also agree that sometimes we don't know what we don't know. There might be something cool that we might want to explore. So I appreciate this, and thanks for answering my questions. I am grateful for that.
Yeah, so is the scope of work just on evaluating grant making best practices, or does it also include an environmental scan of best practices of like opioid abatement?
The environmental scan is this environmental scan is more around the grant making processes. So yeah, that level. But we can pull in levels of information from the national best practices like the Johns Hopkins resource and things like that.
I will add that having the Butler Institute right here, and having the ability for our grantees to have free sessions to reach out is just powerful and impactful. And what I'm hearing from Dr. Jared Olson, the ability to convene folks to talk about a couple things. One is, what data sets are we wanting to achieve here as a council? Of course, we want to save lives, but then there's some upstream prevention work for public health, upstream efforts where we know it'll tackle a couple of outcomes. Working with the Butler Institute, which has got all this data and resources and expertise in that capacity, but then also working at the grantee level is rather unique. That's something that I don't believe other regions are stepping into. So I think that's exciting, and I think long term it's only going to benefit. Our ultimate goal is to prevent opioid addiction, help those that are addicted to become recovery and not addicted, and prevent deaths and overdoses to begin with. So I'm excited with the work, and I've been able to learn a little bit more about the Butler Institute, being the chair, and I'm pretty fascinated with their work, and we're pretty impressed with the ability and with the advisory group, what they're coming up with. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, I agree with you, and I think when you sparked a question or comment in my mind that when I asked the Yarrow Collective about what other data you can collect in the long run, maybe there's some outcomes that we might want to, look at. So besides the saving lives,
Yeah.
did we make people feel like they had more control over their use or felt more connected, and some things that we could show that we made a difference with this money? So because we all may in this room may not be sitting here in 5 years, I don't know, and it would be great to have this information for all those folks to come, since this is a limited time. It's 10, 15 years left on this, and so it'd be nice to make sure that whoever's here has all the tools and resources and everything to keep making good choices. And I think we've been making some good choices, but I do appreciate that. And so I think that also helps us craft our questions or maybe some of the things we want to collect. And I just think this would be really powerful. So thanks.
Oh, thank you. All right, this comes to agenda item 7 on the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
We got a motion. Anybody oppose that motion? The meeting is adjourned successfully. We got through everything, and we're done early this time, folks. Usually we're like, again, big applause to Beth. One thing we will have to do next week is, and Beth was serving as you're kind of like the spokesperson for the council. Is there a better name than that?
Secretary.
Yeah, we do need to officially, the council will need to appoint whomever, so we'll need to do that next one. Also, behind the scenes, Brooke has been working hard on the equity bucket we have, and the motion that was made by Commissioner and seconded. We've been reaching out through Jessica Palmer, again, who's been saving us on organizations that may work in that capacity. But we've got some meetings set up to get some more information to hopefully get them here in front of us to present what they would proposal for us to consider. So that's in the works. Yes, ma'am.
I know we made the motion, but I just wanted to make sure everyone saw. We got one update is that we did get again from the AG's office that just reinforcing there's a memo that was attached for as relating to earned interest on the funds and how it can be used, which is what we already do already, that can only be used for good uses. So that was reinforced again. That was sent out today. And then I just wanted to share the National Counties Organization. They did talk about ongoing support crucial for counties to continue tackling overdose rates and about the opiate, but really the opiate epidemic, but also talk about there's such a rise in polysubstance overdoses, meaning that many more people are dying of using fentanyl mixed with other drugs, and this is coming out of Johns Hopkins, that it creates a larger problem for treatment. And because unlike fentanyl and opiates, there's no medication approved to treat stimulant use. So it is a very interesting article. There's a discussion at the national. I serve on the rural caucus the rural caucus works very closely with the large urban caucus, but I can make copies of this if you're interested in that. But it's really an interesting article. I just wanted to kind of bring that up. So it's a national, and it's a big article. So I'll see if I can get staff to print that or maybe scan it in and email it to you all. if you're interested.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Drive safe. Thank you.
Bye, Freedom.
Thank you, Bill.
Federal government. Right now.